There were 3 of them. Small, soft-skinned creatures no taller than an average plasma rifle. Harassed knees dirt scraped, noses peeling from sun. Their prison was not unpleasant by galactic standards. Padded corners, ambient lighting, nutrient, mist, and yet something about the way they sat, unbothered, wholly unafraid, unnerved the guards. One child, a dark Harajal with a missing tooth and a fistful of gravel, had claimed a corner and declared it her outpost. She stared athwart for hours, whispering to it, as though awaiting coordinates. Another, pale and freckled with a mop of orange curls, paced the cell's length endlessly, hands behind his back like a field marshal inspecting troops. The third, quietest of them all, had tucked himself under the bench and dozed, thumb in mouth, boots still caked in mud. High Commander Velith of the Seabas Dominion observed from the surveillance gallery above, arms crossed behind his spiked, mantled children, he scoffed. What a sentimental species. They squeal when you torch a village, but send their softlings into vacuum with stuffy rodents and hope, curious creatures. Sub-Commander Grix clicked uncertainly. These 3 were collected from the Terran fringe, abandoned outpost, mini. Velith narrowed his eyes, and they did not cry. No, your apex nestot, they did not beg. No, your cruelty. One asked for a soda. Velith leaned closer to the screen. The girl was now attempting to sell her gravel to a cleaning droid. 5 pebbles for 1 shiny chip, she whispered, squinting. You drive a hard bargain, but fine Seven. The droid wheeled away in silence. She shrugged and pocketed Therex again, murmuring, Dad says, never leave a trade without profit. Grix shivered. They speak of fathers often, repeatedly, as if of invoking some greater weapon. One of the children, Freckle Boy, approached the shimmering energy field that served as their door. He peered up at the surveillance lens with a lopsided grin. My name's Nate. Heckled out, cheerful, but you can call me Red. Most do. You got any toast? I like. My dad says carbs are for the weak, but my mom snuck me some once. Anyway, nice ship. Ugly design, but functional. Velith blinked slowly. Did Art just insult our architecture? The girl joined Nate at the doorway. Yeah, your whole base smells like boiled socks, just say, and Velith recoiled. Doth he not understand? They are prisoners of the Seabas Empire. The third child emerged from under the bench, rubbing his eyes. He yawned, then approached the other 2 and leaned against the field. If it were a porch fence. I'm hungry, he said simply. Dad will be mad if I don't eat. He says protein keeps your blood clean before battle. All 3 nodded solemnly at that. Something shifted in the room, not a breeze. There was no air in that chamber, but a tension. A change in Houthguard's eyes darted. The Seabas were telepathic, sensitive to tone, mood, truth. And this wasn't a bluff. I want their names, Villa snapped. Blood lineage, parental designation. They refused to answer, then scanned their genetic sequence. We did. The data did not return. We traced their mitochondrial lines, but what they vanish. Each child has encryption layers within their blood structure. Military grade. There was silence. Velith turned away from the screen. Send a message to the Galactic Central Writ. Inform them that we possess leverage over humanity. Yes, Commander. Shall we send a demand? Velith grinned. His fangs clicked. No, let them stew. Let them worry. But Earth did not stew. Earth did not reply. For 5 hours, the Seabas waited, then 6. Then 12. And on the 13th hour the outer sensors trembled. A single object dripped out of FTL above the prison moon, silent, heatless, invisible. To most scans, only when it was directly averted did the Seabas registers twitch in alarm. It bore no faction markings, no signal, no threat posturing. But then another appeared, then another. 3 ships, 3 signatures. Each one bore a name in the Terran tongue etched into whole metal. Not transmitted property of Dad, not yours. You took the wrong kids. The alarm started to shriek. In the command tower, Veletha's head snapped toward the main holo display. Identified, they are not broadcasting, Bark Grixid, but their ships, our scanners can't read them. It's like they don't exist. There's no crew count, no comms, no power. Signature, that's impossible. Yes, sir. Very Red pressed his face against the energy field. Guess they're here. The girl nodded, expressionless. Told you he'd come. The boy under the bench pulled something from his boot. It looked like a small brass harmonica but glowed with pulsing lines. He handed it to the girl. Daddy said to give you this when the sky turned purple. She nodded solemnly and tapped it twice. It chirped a dance, then went dark, far above. The 3 dreadnoughts opened their holes, not with missiles, not with beams. With silence, the Seabas control metrics went, black lights flickered, AI cores crashed, all power died. And in that instant, every ship within 20 parsecs received the same signal, bouncing across relay satellites, smuggled through dark matter tunnels carved into the galactic spectrum like a branding iron. It was a video feed. 3 men, each seated, each calm. They spoke, not in unison, but with overlapping timing, like chords of a hymn. Return our children, return our blood. You have 30 minutes. Vela stared, mouth dry. Who are they? Grizz's voice was shaking. I've seen Desir. These are humans, but not soldiers. Then what? Fathers and Thuard made the guards in the chamber step back because the children weren't pacing anymore. They were sitting no cross-legged, hands on knees, meditating, waiting. Outside, Seabas defense systems tried to reboot, but each restart flickered out. One technician burst into flame, another's min melted into static from feedback. The ships above were not attacking. Beauty of everything around them was dying. One child, Red, began to hum. It was a soft melody, something like a lullaby, but off just wrong enough to itch under alien skin. "What are they doing?" hissed Velith. "Communicating," said Grix, trembling. "They've been syncing with the enemy vessels. They're the signal routers. They're children." The girl opened one eye. "Nah, we're bait." Silence. Pure silence. And then theater shell of Seabass Fortress 9 began to shed, piece by piece, like armor unfastened, screws reversed, plating lifted into the void as though unzipped. The ship was being dismantled from the outside in. No weapons, no fire, just by invisible fingers. Down in the holding cell, the energy field robbed. Red cracked his knuckles. Guest nap, time's over. The quiet boy stood Anslung his harmonica back in his boot. The girl looked up into the lens directly at Velith. "My dad says, people like you don't listen to the lights go out." The cell doors slid open, not from any command center. They opened because us children wanted them to. And somewhere above a dying moon, 3 dreadnoughts watched in silence. No transmissions, no visible crew, just 3 names written in Terrence. Steel into Galaxy, suddenly horribly aware of its mistake. There was a silence that stretched across void and protocol. It wasn't the silence of peace. It was at haunting quiet before a wolf drops frammed ridge. 3 ships hovered above the fractured moon. They did not move. They did not blink. They simply waited. Inside the Seabass War Council chamber, red lights pulsed like arterial blood. Holographic command trees flickered. Velith barked orders to rebuild systems, restore gravity, purge human interference. But his voice was already thinner, smaller. Across the galaxy, the identities of the 3 Terran vessels had begun to circulate. No flags, no allegiance, just 3 words attached touched by terrified whispers. The fathers came. On board the first ship, a vessel of impossible sleekness and design that didn't belong to any known human registry. General Elias Grant poured a stream of tea into a cracked ceramic mug. He did not sip. He simply watched its stars drift past his viewport, hands folded, breathing steady. He wore a wormwool coat, an earth relic. His eyes, pale gray and glass-like, carried the stillness of oceans that had long since drowned their storms. "I gave them time," he said softly to the room, though no one else was present. He reached for a switch and flipped the comms open. "This is Grant," he said evenly. "I assume you're both awake." On screen, 2 faces appeared. One was grizzled, hard-jawed, and wore a dusty 10 duster with a patch over one eye. His accent bled old Texas. "Been awake since your boy triggered the failsafe," said General Mason Brick Halford, voice like worn gravel. "They treated our kids well. Are we going to have to start collecting limbs?" The other face was clean-shaven, barely a twitch in the cheek, like a statue sculpted by Simone with a vendetta against emotion. General Cassiel Rowe's black collar was button-high, and the neural implants on his temple pulsed like tiny stars. "They ran genetic tags on the children," Rowe said simply, "and didn't recognize the encryption. That tells me 2 things. 1, their tech isn't as advanced as they think. And 2, they're about to understand what that cost." Grant finally sipped his tea. "They haven't sent a message." "Don't need to," Brick said. "That's silence. That's arrogance. They still think they're the ones in control." Rowe's screen flickered as he pulled data streams into view with his neural uplink, intercepted a council feed. Seabass High Command mocked Terran biology, called children lateral vulnerabilities. Brick chuckled darkly. "Oh, bless their hearts. Do we assume they don't know who the kids belong to?" Grant asked. "Not just ignorance," Rowe said. "This was intentional. I believe the Empire targeted Earth families they thought were unprotected. Small settlements, fringes. We left those trails open on purpose." Grant nodded slowly. "So the trap worked. I never liked bin kids." Brick muttered. "You let Yorson carry a demolition capsule in his sock," Grant said, "and he didn't use it." Brick replied. "That's growth." There was a silence, but it wasn't empty. It was thick with knowing because the 3 men hadn't been generals in decades, not formally. They had retreated, disappeared, rejected parades and medals and global broadcasts in favor of something quiet, fatherhood. Each one had buried too many brothers in soil not their own. Each had killed not because they wanted to, but because they were the kind of men history calls when morality fails. And now history had tried them again. "I need a vote," Rosade. "Protocol Omega 11, initiate or delay." "I'm still hoping they have him back politely," Brick said, spinning a silver coin between calloused fingers. Grant set his mug down. "They won't. Then I say we start cleaning house." "I second," Rose said. There was no vote taken, just 3 nods, and the countdown began. Inside Fortress 9, panic had taken root. Quietly at first, officers whispered. A junior technician sobbed into her glove. Commanders issued contracting orders. The ships above hadn't moved in hours. And that was worse than any bombardment because Dunk now breathes horror faster than fire. The children, meanwhile, had left their cell. They walked calmly through hallways now stripped of power, their small steps echoing like drum beats. Droids no longer moved. Doors opened their own accord. Somewhere, a General Sharmonica beeped twice from a ventilation shaft, and several alien systems died in synchrony. A lieutenant made the mistake of grabbing the girl's arm. She looked up at him with calm, curious eyes. My dad says if Sumiona touches me, he won't bury the bodies, just scatter. The sea base's arm twitched and fell off at the elbow. Not by blade, not by force, it simply says set to exist. The girl picked up her gravel and moved on. Far above, the three generals watched a holographic force schematic of the moon fortress rotate slowly between them. Weak points glowed like ember veins. The defenses were solid, but only if you fought fair. And Dumans didn't. Brick leaned forward. I say we do it the quiet way. No explosions, just vanish. I say we let them speak first, Grand Sage. The galaxy's watching. Make them declare who they are before we remind them who we are. I've already written their declaration, Ro murmured. His screen flickered, and then it was no longer a map. It was a message projected across every interstellar broadcast channel. A simple sentence translated into 302 dialects, beamed into every capital, market square, and shrine. They took our children. We gave them one chance. It was not signed, but every leader who read it knew the tone because it wasn't just a threat. It was a promise made by fathers. Brick stood from his command chair, cracked his back and looked out the viewport. Funny thing about being a dad, he said. You give up the wars, the medals, all that crap. Think you're finally done. Then someone messes with your kid, and you remember what you were mad for. Grant nodded solemnly. We didn't want another war, but we never left it behind, Ro finished. Below, the Seabass tried to mount a defense. Fighters deployed, EMP nets flared to life. Ships realigned into a blockade, and none of it mattered because Earth hadn't brought armies. Earth brought fathers, and they had come not with vengeance but with purpose. In the last moments before the standoff broke, a sea signal officer received an incoming message on a channel so old it hadn't been used since the last galactic cleansing cycle. Text only, no signature. It read, "You have 8 minutes left." And then, beneath the moon's fractured core, in the quietest hallway of a dying fortress, the youngest boy, barefoot, thumbs still slightly damp, looked up at the emergency lights, and whispered more to himself than anyone, "Daddy's almost here." The Seabass sent words first, no apologies, just posturing. A broadcast beamed directly to the 3 Terran ships, formal and fork-tongued, rapid in bureaucratic smugness, and translated into stiff galactic syntax. In accordance with Accord 7B Delta, unauthorized parenting units must yield custodial claims to the Dominion Force Species Risk Assessment and Regional Compliance Review. Any retaliation will be considered an act of war. Brick Hafford leaned back in his chair and laughed. A real one. It echoed off steel bulls. I ain't heard something that stupid since the frogs tried to patent wind, he muttered, tipping his hat. Grant didn't reply. He read the message once more, closed his eyes for a heartbeat, and sipped tea that had long since gone cold. Shellrose stood with both hands clasped behind his back, watching the moon rotate beneath them like prey caught under glass. They just declared war, he said calmly. No, Granite murmured. They declared delusion. Inside Seabass Fortress 9, the command deck was unraveling. The children had vanished into the walls. Entire surveillance sectors were dark, and 2 officers had clawed out their eyes after hearing what they described as a lullaby made of teeth. Emergency systems failed in cascading. Waves, doors locked and unlocked themselves at random. Lights flickered in morsel-like pulses that spelled human code. One Seabass admiral whispered, "This is a haunting." "No," said the intelligence director, trembling. "This is them." On board his ship, Brick stood and rolled his neck until it popped. "I'm going to say it plain," he muttered, voice low. "No more talking. No more waiting. No more war council meetings where some skinny worm in robes talk circles till the blood dries." He flicked a switch. A screen came alive. A fleet schematic. Massive Seabass armada formations. Dozens after-ed ships and planetary carriers fanned out like a proud wing. Roke said, "Break the wing." Sile did it speak. He only nodded once. Above Seabass's 3rd defense line, nothing moved. Then, in under a second, 9 capital ships vanished from the star map. Not destroyed, not vaporized, simply gone. Their signatures, erased. Matter displaced with a grace of scalpel cuts. In the Seabass command deck no one breathed. Brick whistled low. "Clean work." "I used their own jump drive against them," Ro replied. "Reversed destination logic. They're scattered across the atmosphere of 7 Gazgians, alive briefly." Grant glanced down at his wristwatch. "They've had more than 8 minutes. I'll handle the southern flank," Brick said. "No booms jets going in the next 10 seconds. 18 ships stopped responding. Their power cores drained. AI systems rewritten mid-cycle holes floated harmless in orbit, like bones. Entire squadrons blinked into silent stasis without a sound. The children had joined the quiet, the fortress's lower decks. Red walked beside the girl who now wore a captain's pin she'd taken from a fleeing Seabass officer. "What's your dad going to do first?" he asked, smiling. "I embarrassed them," she said. "He says he always gives them a chance to surrender before he writes their names into failure. You think they'll surrender, they never do." The youngest, still silent, pressed his palm to a wall. The surface rippled. A slot opened, revealing a Seabass officer curled into himself, hands over his head. "Please," he gasped in broken English. "I did not touch you." The boy blinked. "Okay." He closed the panel again. Above, Grant sent one final message. A single file. No encryption. Recording it began with a photo. 3 children at a picnic on a Terran hill smiling with wildflowers in their hair. Then came the voiceover. Soft and calm. "We told you to return them, you didn't. This is not revenge. This is education." The Seabass Empire's hull collapsed in the next instant. Every data stream fell into recursive loops. Their records began rewriting themselves with falsetto. Birth certificates were replaced by error codes. Whole military divisions were marked as deceased by systems that had never been programmed to lie. Then the sky cracked. No sound, no flash, just pressure as if gravity had bent sideways. The Seabass defense satellite, a weapon capable of igniting moons, exploded inward, folding like origami. A black hole implosion no bigger than a seed, aboard the Empire's last surviving dread carrier. Fleet Marshal Zeit snarled and screamed, demanding all remaining vessels return fire. "Power up singularity cannons. Deploy anti-Hemand antennas." His words never reached his crew because they were no longer aboard. His ship was empty. He stood alone on the bridge as the lights flickered and gravity faded. A child's voice played from every speaker. "You shouldn't have touched what wasn't yours." Z screamed until the vacuum took him. Below in Thifa-Tress's corridor, the girl stopped walking and looked up as though listening to something only she could hear. "They broke the tether," she said. "What's that mean?" Red asked. "It means we didn't have to hold back anymore." On the human ships, the men remained silent. No celebration, no boasts, just calm. "I've deactivated the leash protocols," Rose said. "The children can now use full autonomous link sync with us. Biometric neural thread is online." "You're sure they're ready?" Grant asked. "They've been ready since we gave them names," Ro answered. Brick grunted. "Then let's finish it. Make clean Cassio move first." He uploaded a virus so elegant it made music. Each note a deletion command. Each harmony a data purge. Black sites went dark. War vaults burned Themsovs from history. Their senses fractured. Their treasury began wiring galactic credits to non-existent planets. Grant sent a pulse across the fortress surface. Every door opened at once, not just cells, vaults, hangars. The structure was now a sieve. Any species Seabass had captured or enslaved was free to walk out. A galaxy watched it from 1,000 angles as 3 men dismantled a superpower without firing a single traditional weapon. And yet the humans were still restrained. Brick leaned forward. "Want me to make it loud?" "Wait," Grant said. From the edge of space, a final Seabass vessel approached, smaller, fast white flag displayed not as a file, but as a real cloth flag tied to the hull. A desperate gesture by something that finally understood. It broadcast an open signal. "Audio only will return them. No terms. We accept defeat. Please, we didn't know." The voice broke near the end. Grant closed his eyes. "Now they learn we never wanted them to." The children entered the central chamber. They did not look angry, just calm. Each one approached a glowing pedestal, placed a hand. The Seabass fortress began to rise, levitated piece by piece. The core peeled upward, leaving a crater behind. The fortress wept metal, floor scurled upward, spires bent in supplication, and then, without drama, it disassembled, not destroyed, not detonated, just undone, like it had never been built. The Seabass ships remaining fled, not in formation, dignity. They scattered in the command room aboard Grant's ship. The T finally tipped, pulled across Theta. Steam curled upward. He didn't stop it. "We're done," Rose said softly. "The fortress is gone. The files are gone. Their fleet's history is gone. They'll write this as legend," Brick said. "Or nightmare. They'll write it however we let them." Grant said. That children stepped onto the teleport pad that now flickered in the empty void. They looked up, heads tilted. "My dad's voice is quieter when he's angry," the girl said. "He only ever gets this quiet after." "After what?" Red asked. "After headicides, the story's not over." They vanished in a shimmer of white light. The galaxy thought it understood humans. They were strange creatures, too emotional, too impulsive, too sentimental about soft things like children, music, and flags. Their soldiers bled for concepts like loyalty. Their poets bled for people. Their weakness, the Empire said, was love. They weren't wrong, but they had misunderstood what that meant. The Seabass Empire had lost. Everyone could see it. The fortress, that was gone. The fleet shattered. Command lines in ruins. Sectors had gone dark. Their weapons were silent. Not because they'd failed, but because the humans had decided they no longer mattered. And yet the human ships didn't leave. They lingered, in orbit, engines idle, broadcasting from the galaxy, waited for demands, territory, tribute, reparations. But no message came. Not from Earth, not from the fathers, not from the children. In silence, fear grew teeth. Castile Rose stood barefoot on the glass panel of his command deck, hands behind his back. The space below swirled in a gravitational prism, warped from the jump scars left by fleeing ships. He was watching the Seabass's final act of desperation. A message had arrived, encrypted in 72 layers of psychic code and embedded in a living organism. The package had been shot toward the human fleet like a seed from a broken tree. It hovered now before him, a sphere of flesh and glass pulsing with panicked desperation. It spoke. "We surrender." And Contley and Rowe tilted his head. And the sphere stuttered. "We wish to ensure the survival of our species, and we will withdraw from contested territories, dismantle half our military, share technology. We ask only that you leave our young alive." Rowe blinked. He did not smile. He simply said, "You're still bargaining. This is a negotiation. This is your obituary draft." The Spheratron bowed. But your fathers. You must understand preserving lineage, protection of young, ensuring survival. You kidnapped our children," Rose said. "You weaponized their biology. You examined their blood like it was a blueprint for war. We didn't send our armies to rescue them." He leaned forward. His voice dropped. "They sent us." The sphere dimmed. Rose stepped back. "Grant will speak to you now," he said, turning away. The chamber darkened as the feed redirected. When it revealed a campfire, not aboard any ship, not in space, a real fire crackling gently in a forest clearing on Earth. The man before it sat cross-legged in a wool coat, boots muddy face lined with quiet anger. His name was General Elias Grant. The fire flected in his eyes. "I grew tomatoes for the last 7 years, he said. Fey transmission didn't interrupt. I taught my daughter how to read. I taught her how to make tea, how to shoot a rifle, how to bury a thing you love properly. I left war. I left pain. I left everything you think made me dangerous." He picked up a photograph, held it to the firelight. 3 children laughing under the sun. She was 5 when she asked me why war starts. I told her it's when people forget who they are, when power becomes a habit, when fear becomes policy, when someone gets used to taking a look at into the lens you took. And now we remember. The fire cracked louder. Sparks rose into the dark. "I am not here for vengeance. I am not here for justice. I am here to make sure you never teach this mistake again." Behind him, the wind stirred. Pine needles danced. Somewhere an owl called. He lifted his hand and the camera feed dissolved. The signal went dead. And in thought instant, 1,000 dormant signals embedded across the galactic net ignited. Back doors. The children had written inside Seabass communication nodes came to life. Viral code bloomed like flowers in concrete across Empire territory. Statues fell, history erased, propaganda replaced with truth, images of children in cages, surgical diagrams, mockery in Seabass courtrooms, spliced footage of officers laughing as they ordered the 3 children dissected. The galaxy saw, and humanity did not ask them to rise. They simply left the evidence and waited. 10 planets rioted in the first hour. 47 Seabass colonies declared neutrality. 5 commanders dictated and asked for asylum on Terran ships. And still Earth did not speak. They did not threaten. They only waited. Brick Halford was the first to move again. He'd taken off his jacket and was working a steel forge at the back of his ship, hammering something that rang like church bells in a gun barrel. Sparks flew. His arms moved with slow, deliberate grace, like a man building not a weapon, but a sermon. "You ever," he said aloud, "that the scariest thing about humans ain't what we do when we're mad, but what we dowhand we ain't." Sile, watching from the screen, nodded once. "They assume Roger's our fuel." "It ain't no," Rowe agreed. "It's memory." On Earth, people gathered in silence around fire pits, screens, rooftops. They didn't cheer, they didn't post. They watched. And then came the sound. It started on one ship, a hum, then a rhythm, a child's song. The one the Seabase had heard in the prison. The melody that scratched at their minds. Now it echoed from every human frequency, from ancient radios, from subliminal implants, from the coms of Earth-allied stations. It filled space with something primal and haunting. The song had no lyrics, just 3 notes. But every species that heard it understood, because it wasn't about vengeance. It was about reminder that humanity had grown teeth behind its smile. That the hands that built cradles also learned to cradle triggers. Those who bake bread and tuck children in are also the ones who end wars, not with armies, but with resolve. The children returned to Earth quietly. No parades, no speeches. They stepped off the transporter in a quiet glade where their fathers stood in stillness. Diggle ran first, gravel still in her pocket. Her father knelt and caught her wordless. Red reached Brick last. He tugged his dad's duster and grinned. "Did you win?" Brick stared at him a moment, then picked him up like a sack of grain. "We ended it." The quiet boy approached Rowe. Neither spoke. The child simply handed him the harmonica. Rowe took it, nodded, and turned to the stars. A Botham satellites shut down one by one. Across the Seabass sectors, a quit begging, not from conquest, from absence. The humans didn't destroy the Seabass empire. They deleted it. Its systems no longer functioned. Its names no longer registered in central galactic lexicons. It was scrubbed from interstellar maps, transports rerouted, trade channels were indexed, planets marked unknown. Thesia Base still existed, but no one would remember them. This was not extinction, this was erasure. Back on Earth, General Grant planted tomatoes again. Rohr returned to his observatory, teaching orphans how to code. Brick built a ranch fence from ship metal. None of them spoke publicly. The war had never been about conquest. It had been about Mori and across the stars. When alien parents told stories to their children about what happened when Earth was tested, they lowered their voices. They chose their words carefully. Because Theatruth was simple. The humans had come politely. They had asked nicely. They had waited. And when that failed, they reminded the galaxy what their real weapon was. Not ships, not firepower, not even their generals. It was this. They had something to protect. And there was nothing more dangerous in the universe than a human fighting for a child.